Welcome back to our workshop. I'm going to walk you through chair repair basics, and that's how to take a loose chair like this apart and put it back together so it's going to last for decades to come. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do that. I'm going to share with you some tips, and more importantly, I'm going to show you what not to do in your chair repair.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
What I need to do is take that apart, repair it, and put it back together so I can get this chair in working order.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
Before we start taking the chair apart, let's talk about why chairs become loose. The legs on chairs frequently become loose over time because there's a live load on this. If you look at someone using a chair 3 times a day over a period of a year, that's 1,000 times that this chair has a lot of weight on it that's moving around. So these joints do become loose. It might take a couple decades for that to happen, but eventually every chair gets there. The first sign that it's loose is the sound. You might end up with a little bit of a squeak that gives you a hint that wood's rubbing together. If you end up with a chair that's loose and it's got some movement, that's a warning. If you end up leaving that chair much longer, you could end up with it broken. And I've seen lots of broken chairs. So catch it before it gets to that point. When you've got a loose chair, make sure you take the time to repair it. So the first thing I'm going to do is flip this over on the padded bench, and then we'll take a look at what's underneath. You want to make sure that you pad the surface and the front of the work surface that you're working on. So I use carpet underlay for this. And just flip it over. And that protects both the seat and the back from getting damaged when you're working on it. There are 2 key ways chairs are made. One is where the chair back is secured to the base like this. This is more common in casual furniture, more used in kitchens and everyday use. The other is where the chair back and the leg are all one piece, and that's more common in formal chairs. On a chair like this, the first thing I need to do is pull out these joints here so everything else can come apart. This is what a joint should look underneath a chair. So this is what's called the tenon going into the hole, which is called the mortise. And there should never be a screw through here. Don't be tempted to put metal in the bottom of chairs because there's constant movement and the wood and the metal always have a battle and the metal always wins. You end up just wearing out that joint more and more. So this is what it should look like. Now let's pop it apart. Now before you get too excited in taking this apart, I recommend labeling the parts. So I label them based on how I see them. So this is my left front leg. Here is my right front leg, so RF. Here is the left stretcher, that's this part here. And here is the right stretcher. The part in the middle here, this is called an H stretcher. So I just label it here so I know which direction this goes so I don't flip it around when I put it back together. And then I label the back left here. I don't need to label the right because that's just deductive reasoning. So now that I've got them labeled, I can tell when I put this back together, this is the top surface I need to be working on because of the label, and it's on the left-hand side. The H stretcher here, this is the way it needs to face up, and I've got the left marking here for that joint. Now, what I can do is get out my clamps, and this is a clamp that allows you to turn it from a regular clamp into a stretcher. So what it does is it provides reverse power that I can now put it in here and start pulling out the parts nice and gently. I'll put the second clamp on here, and what we'll do is apply pressure to both sides. You can hear these starting to come apart, and if you just sort of turn them a little bit, what they do is they start to loosen up and give way. I don't want to take this all the way out. What I want to do is loosen it. So I've got this one loosened here, the other one loosened at the front, and now I'll loosen the back ones before taking them fully apart. So I'll put that one on that side, and this one over here. And again, I want to put some pressure on all sides of the mortise and tenon. And these will start to come apart. So just be patient with it, let it come apart as it naturally wants to come apart. Don't force it. The worst thing I see people do is use mallets on furniture, and you're just asking for something to break. So there, this one's fully out now. This one is a little bit more stubborn, but there we go. Okay, so these two are out. This one's still anchored in there a bit. So we'll just work around the chair and get them all out. It's a little bit more pressure, some wiggling. Should release this one as well. There we go. So now we can take this chair apart. And this one was labeled by the customer as loose. You can see it was already popped out. So that one's done. Well, these ones are actually really in here firm. Okay, none of these have any movement to them. So if you try and pull them apart, just gently, you can gauge whether there's movements in the joint or not. And all of these joints on here are solid, except for this one. So this is the only one we need to reglue, as well as regluing these parts here. And I'm going to take this label off that the customer had labeled what the problem was, and we'll clean off these joints. So as I mentioned before, these are called the tenons, the holes are called the mortises, and on the tenons, what you need to do is make sure you clean off all the glue. So what we're going to use is modern PVA glue. It's typical carpenter's glue, and in order for it to stick, it needs bare wood. So we need to clean that off, and you can do one of two things. You can use sandpaper. A good grit for the sandpaper is 120 grit. That's coarse enough that it's going to get these parts cleaned off. So it's a matter of cleaning off those areas. Now, if you're doing this enough where you're actually running a business, you need to work on doing things faster, you can use a file. But you need to make sure you're experienced at this, because you want to just take off enough where you're taking off the glue and not changing the shape of that tenon. What you could do is damage the joint. So this isn't something I would recommend for the average person, but repairing chairs is actually a rewarding business. So if you're interested in doing that, this is a technique that will help you. There's a bit of residue there, but here you can see lots of glue. So you want it nice and clean like that so the glue will stick. Another thing I want to show you is right here. You see there's some gloss on that piece of wood? If I turn this, you'll see there's no gloss here. And what that is that piece has been rubbing so long that it's actually polished the wood. So that's an indication that your chair has worn more than it should. You want to sand that a little bit just to rough up the surface so it's ready for glue. I've now got all these tenons cleaned off, so it's time to move on to the mortises. You can see inside the mortises here, there's also some glue residue. So that needs to be taken out with either sandpaper, or if you're very careful, you can use a round file. But my favorite way is to use Forstner bits. I prefer using Forstner drill bits because they were what was originally used to make this hole. They make flat bottom holes, so it's just a matter of choosing the right size, and it clears out the hole very quickly. I've got the right size bit here, so I'll set this aside and put it in the drill. And you don't want to run this forward because you could end up changing the direction of that hole. So the trick is put it in reverse and get it down to the bottom of the hole. And then once you've got it at the bottom, then run it forward, and that will clean out the glue residue. So you can see here, there's a piece of glue. So you can see how easy this process is. It's just a matter of working down to the bottom of the hole, and then forward again. And there, it's a clean hole. I'll get everything tidied up here, and then we'll talk about glue.
Be sure to go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter for links to new videos, workshop tips, and more. Now back to fixing furniture.
If you look at the back of my workbench, you can tell I use a lot of different types of glue. The type of glue you don't want to be using on chair repairs is polyurethane. It's a glue that goes on one side and then you put moisture on the other and bring them together. And if there are any gaps, it foams up. That foam that's in that gap doesn't provide any structure at all. So don't confuse that gap filling with something that's actually holding. You have tight joints here, so you want to use wood glue. PVA, carpenter's glue. So typical yellow glue is what you want. If you're working on an antique, you want to use a hide glue. And I've got a whole video on different types of glue. I'll leave a link in the video description below. Now, when you're gluing your parts, if you do have one that has a lot of play in it and there's some gaps, the only glue that will hold when you've got gaps is epoxy. So make sure you're using the right glue for the job. Typically, carpenter's glue is what you need. Now, before you take the lid off your glue, you need to make sure you do a few things. The first one is make sure you understand where all your pieces are going. This chair is really simple because there's just one piece that's missing. But if you've got 7 pieces here, you want to make sure you lay them out because you've got a limited time once you put glue on to put everything together. The other tip I've got for you is using an artist brush like this to apply glue. When people put glue in a joint like this, or they just put it on the tenon and then put it together, it's not enough gluing surface. You've got a full circle here that needs glue. So what I do is I apply glue to the back end of that brush and I roll it around on the inside, and that fully coats the inside of the mortise. Then I use this end of the brush to cover off and make sure I've got 100% coverage on that piece. The other important preparation step is making sure you're working on a flat level surface. If you're gluing up a chair on a surface that's a little bit out of kilter, when you put it together and it dries, you're going to put it on your floor and it's going to rock. So make sure you're sitting on a flat surface. That prevents you from having to trim a leg afterwards, which can be a challenging thing to do. I'm going to put this part in here just to get it set in the right spot and then flip it over. So the back legs here go in first and then the front legs go in, and then I take a rubber mallet and set each of these in. Okay, and now we can take this out of the way. Stand up the chair. Now, in order to make sure this sits level, I need to put some weight on it. So I just put a piece of plywood on and then some cinder blocks. So now this provides even pressure, and now I can clamp it up. It's time to put the clamp on now, and these legs are flared. So as I tighten this clamp, it's going to want to lift. So you take advantage of that H stretcher in the middle here to provide some resistance and clamp it on this way. And what we want to do is make sure we've got a nice tight joint there. Now, while the glue is still wet on these joints, we'll just wipe it off. That makes for easy cleanup, and we'll let it sit overnight.
Please give us a thumbs up so more people will see our videos.
I'll flip over the chair one more time so we can take the tags off of the bottom. I'm going to take these tags off and I can reuse them. I use blue masking tape instead of green masking tape. That's because this is stickier. The green masking tape is just got a light tack to it, and you can't reuse the labels, as well as I found sometimes on a really slick surface they can just peel off. So I recommend going with the blue masking tape when you do these. So I just take these off, stick them on the side of my cabinet, and use them next time. My final tip for you is be proud of your work. If you're running a business, put a sticker on the bottom of the chair. That way the customer knows how to reach you if there might be a warranty issue, but more importantly, they know where to call when they want more furniture repaired. Now this chair repair is complete, and it can go back to the customer. If you're learning from our videos, I'd love to hear in the comments below what you like about them and some suggestions for improvement. We're building a supportive community around furniture repair, so if you can give us some feedback, that would be helpful so we can make it more useful for you. If you'd like to subscribe to our channel, you can click over here, click on the bell icon, and you'll get notified every time we publish a video. Thanks for watching Fixing Furniture.